So lactose is the sugar component that's in milk. And that's why you have people that will say, I can eat this type of dairy, but I can't eat this. And butter is one of the things that is very low in lactose.
How would it present itself if you were ingesting dairy, but your body wasn't too happy with you?
So you can have joint inflammation or acne. A lot of people don't realize that acne is a form of inflammation. Your body will try to get rid of things that it doesn't like. And one of the ways that it tries to get rid of it is through the dermis.
On today's episode, we'll be looking at dairy. It can be a tasty treat in your diet, but over 70% of the world becomes lactose intolerant after childhood. How do you know if you're lactose intolerant? And what are some foods that you can add to your diet if you're unable to have dairy that can give you some of the same health benefits? We're going to get into all of it. Let's get right to it. All right, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. I'm feeling good. So we got something special today. We have one of our viewers who is always watching, always commenting, always engaging. Julie on YouTube has a question for us.
Yeah, she's a supporter for sure.
Yeah,
Julie,
it's nice.
Thank you very much.
So Julie says, hey, Mike and Nick, I'm 53 years old. I feel better when I take dairy out of my diet, but I am worried that by taking dairy out of my diet, I'm missing out on some of that calcium that I need at my age. Mike, what do you think about that?
She should be concerned about getting calcium because this is a thing for everyone, not just women. Because when we think about calcium, we think about osteoporosis, and that's thought of to be a woman's problem. Men can actually have bone loss as well. And some
Which
people,
just comes with age? Is that what's happening, or?
Yeah, absolutely with age, but women seem to suffer from osteoporosis, osteopenia, which is the beginning stage, more than men. But also too, Nick, a lot of people just don't do well with calcium or dairy, and that's going to be your best or most bioavailable source of calcium, or where people go to in their mind when they think about calcium.
Sure.
They're going to go right to dairy.
As always with anything, if you're going to change your diet, before you do anything, consult a physician, talk to your doctor. Don't make any major dietary changes without speaking to your physician, right or wrong.
100%. That goes with every video we do.
Okay. So I guess let's just start off. Why do we need dairy? Like, what is good? What is beneficial about dairy for those of us who can digest dairy properly? What are we getting? What are the benefits from dairy?
From the day we went to school, we heard about how important dairy is. And really what they're talking about is the phosphorus, the calcium, and the vitamin D that you get from dairy.
And we're talking about dairy, so we're saying milk. We're saying obviously cheeses, butter.
Yeah.
Yogurt.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, yogurt, kefir. Now,
right.
It's funny with butter, a lot of people, and look, we're going to have to do many videos on dairy because there's so many different layers to it. But there's a lot of people that think they can't have dairy, and it's not the dairy itself, Nick, that they are allergic to. It's the lactose or the casein. So when you talk about something like butter, not only is it delicious, but it doesn't have a lot of the allergic or problematic digestion-wise proteins that like a piece of cheese would. Because when you look at dairy with butter, it doesn't have a lot of lactose in it. Mm-hmm. And lactose, and remember we talked about in the carbohydrate video, is OSE. Mm-hmm. Anything OSE is OS, which stands for sugar. So lactose is the sugar component that's in milk. And that's why you have people that will say, I can eat this type of dairy, but I can't eat this. And butter is one of the things that is very low in lactose. Oh. So you have somebody that says, cheese destroys me, but I can have butter. And that's the reason why. Now, it's funny, yogurt and kefir or kefir, whoever wants it, there'll be arguments on the right way to articulating that word, but sure. I don't care. So a lot of people don't realize this, and this is another video, don't do well with that. And here's the reason why. It's fermented. And some people have what's called histamine intolerance. And anything that is old or sprouted or that grows these bacteria cultures can actually cause a histamine response in someone. So someone can have yogurt or kefir and be like, oh, just can't have dairy. when it maybe not the dairy, it might be the actual bacteria in those type of dairies that they're having a problem with. So dairy's got a lot of layers.
Now, another thing that I think can get confusing for people, and I know that it's used interchangeably a lot, is having an allergy, having being intolerant to something, or having a sensitivity to something.
Yes.
So what are the differences between an allergy, a sensitivity, and an intolerance?
Okay, so we're both not doctors, but just in our layman's term,
Sure.
I mean, an allergy is going to be where you break out in a rash. Maybe you get, your throat closes up.
Okay.
This can actually be life-threatening, and that's a true allergy.
Right, and that happens immediately if you're eating something that you're allergic to.
It can happen pretty quickly.
Okay.
Some foods have a delayed response, and this is why it's very difficult to figure out food intolerance sometimes, because with sensitivities and intolerances, it could take up to 48 hours to start to screw with you.
Wow.
And then you're 2 days into it, and it was the food that you ate 2 days ago that really is giving you that little buggy rash on your hip, or
Okay.
a little ringing in your ears, or however it presents itself. So, but a true allergy, you'll break out in some sort of hives, or your throat will close up. Some people's lips close up. The tubes in the ears can swell, and they can hear
Ringing?
It's called tinnitus. Yeah, you get ringing in the ears.
Oh, wow.
And there usually is not too much of a mystery of what's going on. Someone knows, and a lot of times they have to be rushed to the hospital. And sensitivities and intolerances, they're kind of cousins, and they could just kind of give you overall malaise, kind of feeling dull. It can cause depression in people. Maybe a little tiny rash that won't go away, that you've seen a dermatologist or multiple dermatologists, and they give you a topical steroid and it just doesn't seem to go away. A nagging joint or something like that.
Okay.
And these are more your intolerances and sensitivities, and they're not life-threatening, but they can ruin your life and just kind of make
Your
you feel...
quality of life
Yes.
can go down considerably if you're constantly, ingesting a food that your body's not happy with, and you have, some itchy skin or a rash or some bloating or things like that, right? And,
Yeah.
and these are some of the symptoms that people can have when they are lactose intolerant.
Yes. And in something like, you say, oh, I'm just sensitive, and people will, if you go to a party, Nick, and you say, oh, I don't want that, I'm sensitive to it. There's a lot of in the world, and they'll make you feel bad about. But these sensitivities can actually be debilitating to people. If you have a rash that's gnawing at you all night long, it can make it where you literally cannot sleep because
Right.
you're itching yourself all night long. Just because something is a sensitivity or an intolerance doesn't mean that it can't totally wreck and ruin your life.
Yeah.
So and because we're on the dairy topic, dairy has casein, it has lactose, and it could be dairy intolerance or allergy in itself. There's different layers of dairy.
So give us a couple of symptoms that people might look for to decide if they're maybe having a problem with dairy. Like how would it present itself if you were ingesting dairy, but your body wasn't too happy with you?
Joint inflammation, it could be diarrhea, it can be total malaise, which just means kind of 24-hour exhaustion and depression and all these different things. So a big thing with dairy, Nick, two cues that you maybe have, there's a lot of cues, but
Gas.
Gas and bloating, diarrhea, that's lactose usually.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you have the inflammation that dairy can cause in certain people. So you can have joint inflammation or acne. A lot of people don't realize that acne is a form of inflammation. Your body will try to get rid of things that it doesn't like. And one of the ways that it tries to get rid of it is through the dermis. So a lot of times people have cystic acne. I know that when I eat a lot of acne, I tend to get pimples on the back of my neck.
Sorry, when you eat a lot of dairy, you mean?
What did I say?
You said when I eat a lot of acne, which I'm hoping you don't. Just because I don't know everything about you.
Nick,
But this
you've
is
exposed me.
This is something weird that I don't want to know, is what I'm saying. I don't want to know.
But yeah, when I eat a lot of dairy, I tend to get a little bit of the pimples on the back of my neck. Thank God I'm not a big pimple guy.
So that's an intolerance?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
But
yeah.
one you're willing to deal with so you can have some cheese,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Well, every weekend I have a little
And
cheese
that's
in it.
really the calculation. If it's a very slight intolerance, but you really enjoy the food, you know,
Yes.
maybe you just have to say, I know what's going to happen when I do this. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to do it all the time.
Yep.
And then I'm going to deal with a couple pimples on the back of my neck, and I'm going to wear a turtleneck and be good.
Yeah. And this is yeah, it's great. And this is a decision someone can make if they have a sensitivity or an intolerance.
But not an allergy.
An allergy, you don't roll those dice, man. It
Right.
could be life-threatening.
Right, right.
But yeah, it could be joint inflammation. It could be cystic acne, UTIs and yeast infections for a woman. Sorry, everyone, an itchy anus.
I don't feel good
Nick's
now.
shaking
I
his
feel
head.
like a little nauseous. I don't want to think about that, but okay.
Beginning of your digestive tract starts in your mouth and your butt, right? So those are the two things that you can actually feel, right? So if there's a problem, you might get a canker sore or a cold sore on your lip or get thrush on your tongue. And then you can get anal fissures or you can get itchy butt because it's passing out and your body is actually allergic to it and you're having a response. So it can present itself in a lot of different ways. But if somebody says, I just don't feel well when I take this food out, provided they know other nutrition factors, then there's no food that you have to eat. And that is the great thing with modern technology. She's right. She should be concerned that she needs to get calcium, especially as she gets older. But everybody needs calcium. So the great news is, Nick, she has options like fortified milk. You have cashew, almond, flax milk, oat milk. All these milks are now fortified with the calcium and sometimes vitamin D. We could also get calcium from green leafy vegetables like broccoli and kale, bok choy.
Not as concentrated, I assume, as dairy would have.
Definitely not as concentrated, good point. And when they do have that, pairing it with a little bit of vitamin C can help pull that calcium in. Now, a lot of times people will go and say, oh, spinach. You want to get green vegetables on because there'll be vegans that are watching this. And that's really, forget about somebody who has an intolerance. Vegans and vegetarians, well, not vegetarians because they do eat dairy, but vegans, they really have to be mindful on getting enough calcium. But there is, and again, we're opening a box of worms here, but certain green vegetables are very high in what's called oxalates, and oxalates can bind to calcium. So when you look up on the internet, you should be looking up green leafy vegetables that are low in oxalate in regards to getting your calcium. It doesn't mean that you can't eat those foods, but if your goal is to get X amount of calcium, just know that if you're pulling it from green leafy vegetables, don't get a lot of that with high calcium oxalates because they can actually bind to the calcium and make you not absorb it.
Now, they also have non-dairy milks that are fortified with calcium, right?
Well,
so like an almond, you said that. So
yeah.
almond milk and oat milk and soy milk and things like that. But those people can have intolerances to soy or to nuts or to other different things, right? So you do have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, so when you look at what's called a RAS test, right? And those are going to be your top allergens. When anybody presents with an allergy or a rash, the doctors are going to start at the...
Is this the one where they prick your skin with a bunch of needles?
They can do that. They can do a basic blood test. Blood test is really accurate a lot of times, but they're going to do the biggest culprits, and that's going to be dairy, eggs, shellfish, corn, peanuts, and chocolate. So
that's a tough one.
Yeah,
that's a
Thank
tough
God
one.
I'm not poisoned by the chocolate demons talking to me that I like chocolate, but it doesn't call me at night.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So, but yeah, those fortified milks. And by the way, Nick, that's a great point because in the beginning, when this all first started, there was like there was like almond milk, rice milk, and I don't know, there was one other one that's escaping me. But now there's almond and there's cashew and there's soy and there's rice and there's oat milk and there's flax milk and there's coconut milk. there's got to be some sort of fortified milk that somebody can have that they're not allergic to, So there's a way, and obviously then there's GNC or Vitamin Shop that you can go and get these calcium supplements. Now the jury's out on the fact whether these are healthy. There was some studies that came out that men that use calcium supplements can actually increase their risk of heart attack. That's way over our pay grade, but there's a way for you to get your calcium, but it is a huge concern.
Now, some other things that I wanted to mention. I know a good friend of mine is lactose intolerant. He can't have any dairy, but he can have goat cheese because he can have goat milk, I guess,
Yes.
which is different than cow's milk. And so there are some cheeses that are made with goat's milk, not cow's milk, and you can have those if you can't have other dairies,
Yes,
right?
correct. Yeah, it's the protein is different, and again, that's out of our pay grade, but yes, your body will let you know. When it comes to food intolerances and sensitivities and allergies, there's ways to figure these things out and figure out whether they're working for you or not. Now, one other thing I will say about dairy, because I don't eat a lot of dairy, I seem to get a lot of sinus infections if I eat dairy on a consistent basis, except the acne that I tried to eat that one time. You called me, that's gross, right? So whey protein isolate. Now, everybody knows about whey protein shakes if you've didn't come under a rock. Now, there's two different, in fact, you texted me a couple of weeks ago about your son about getting that whey protein shake, right? He wants to get jacked up. Now he's watching the Lynch Fit podcast, right? Now there's whey protein concentrate, which has lactose in it, and it's a bit cheaper for the supplement companies, but there's whey protein isolate. It's an isolated part of the dairy. It's super, super bioavailable to the body. It's probably got the best bioavailability of any protein.
Which is what? What is bioavailability?
How you soak up the protein.
Okay.
So you have eggs, egg whites and eggs, and whey protein isolate almost have like 100, I think whey protein isolate might be a 99 or 100% bioavailability, meaning what you eat, you absorb all of it. Where steak and chicken, they're high, but they're like maybe on, I think, like high 70s or in the 80s. So I actually can drink whey protein isolate every single day, and I get no acne, no sinus infection, no joint discomfort, and it's got calcium in it as well. Okay. Now, whey protein concentrate is higher in calcium, but it's also got the lactose component. So sometimes I've worked with people, Nick, over the years, and they want to drink a shake, right? And they say, oh, I can't have dairy. I just say, just buy one tub of whey protein isolate, and if it doesn't jive with you, get this brand, and I'll take it from you. I'll pay it. And a lot of times, people that think they can't have dairy, yours truly, on a regular basis, they can have that whey protein isolate because it's lactose free. And it doesn't have any casein. And those are the two components in dairy that most people are having a problem with. Now, you can have somebody with a whey protein isolate allergy and a total across-the-board allergy of dairy.
But it's less common.
It's less common than lactose and casein.
Okay.
And a lot of doctors and physicians and stuff, they just don't, have the education on these type of things. It's not taught in medical school, and they say, just don't have dairy. But it's not the dairy itself, it's the casein and the lactose.
Sure.
And the whey protein isolate does have calcium in it. And that's something that maybe Julie wants to try, and it's not a dairy issue. It's a casein and a lactose issue. And if she still is plagued by that and whatever her feels tired or whatever, she didn't tell us what her problem is, then that's where she says, okay, I'm going to try my plant milks. I'm going to do my green leafy vegetables. Even almonds have some calcium in it. And it all adds up.
Sure.
But, you do need a fair amount of calcium in a day.
Now, let me ask you this, because me personally, there was a time in my life, in my early 20s, where I was lactose intolerant. If I had any milk, if I had any cheese, I'd get, a little gassy, I'd just be uncomfortable. It made my my nose stuffy. It was very odd. And so I totally cut it out. I was living dairy-free for a long time. but they weren't debilitating problems for me. So every once in a while I would sneak in a little cheese, a little something here and there. And then 12, 15 years later, it just went away. I stopped being allergic, and now I can have a glass of milk if I wanted, and I have no problem.
Yeah.
Is that common?
It's not common because a lot of people aren't doing what you did to lead to the ability for you to have dairy.
Okay.
But with dairy and eggs, provided your doctor says it's okay, you can abstain from these foods, heal your gut, and then bring them back in, I would say 14 to 15 weeks just to be safe, and see if you're getting that stuffy nose, that acne. And if you're not, you can pull them back in. Some people will win the lotto and they can have it back in their diet every single day, and they've rehabilitated themselves. And that's actually what's cool. Then that's great for you. And some people, it's kind of like I do it. I used to get sinusitis all the time. I took dairy out of my diet for a long period of time. Now I have it Saturdays, but if I keep on pushing that dairy button, like full dairy, the whey protein isolate I have every single day. But if I do full dairy, like cheese or whatever, 2-3 days, I start to get a little bit of a clogged nostril.
Okay.
Right? So I've rehabilitated myself, but not as good as you. But sure. that is a thing, and that's the reason why that's happening.
For people who want to find out if they are intolerant to dairy, is there an easy way at home for people to change their diet a little bit and see how the dairy is affecting them?
Yeah, do what we're just talking about. Take all the foods out that have, obviously take dairy out.
For how long, though?
I'm going to say give yourself 4 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is not, you can't just stop for a day and see what happens. If you really want to find out.
Because food has a tendency to burrow itself places in the body fat and stuff like that. Especially a lot of people get congestion in their head and your sinuses get blocked up. I know I won't get too visual here, but when I decided to give up dairy, I actually had chronic sinusitis at one point. And I went on an antibiotic, and I had like one of those inhalers. Not inhalers, like a sinus, a steroid spray.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Once I gave up dairy, this is a long, long time ago when I educated myself, probably 30 years ago, I was blowing my nose, and it felt like my brains were coming out. And I was like, I remember laying in bed, Nick, 2-3 weeks later when I gave it totally up. And I didn't know about the whey protein concentrate isolate thing there. I just gave it all up. Oh my God, I was laying in bed, bro. I was 25 years old, and I was breathing like I've never experienced before. And I felt like somebody took a drill and rotor-rooted my sinuses. And I was like, oh my God, it feels like I have a new nose. So a lot of times people are walking around with low-level inflammation and they don't know. So take these things completely out and you will get signs. It might be that wrist that's been killing you, that's been making you not be able to do push-ups.
Now, it may not be dairy. There are other things that can do that too, but yes, dairy could be one of the culprits, right?
Dairy is a very, very congesting food. Sure. So yes, you're right, Nick. You can have an allergy to anything. And some things are highly unlikely, but I did have a client that had an allergy to chicken breast, which is bizarre.
I have a family member who has an allergy to chicken breast.
Okay, so there you go, but it's not common. But dairy is a bastard in the fact that it's highly allergic or a high allergen for people, but it's one of these foods that tends to cause mucus formation in the body, along with, sorry everyone, chocolate. And weirdly enough, people don't think about this, bananas. Anytime my clients call me and say, hey, Mike, I'm not going to come in, I'm feeling a little, and I hear they're congested, I'm like, all right, no dairy, no chocolate, no bananas until you feel better. Because they're congesting foods. Huh. They tend to be mucus forming, and dairy is on the top list on top of the allergens it has.
So no chocolate smoothies?
Not when you're sick.
Okay, all right. I think we covered a lot. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about. We want to hear from everybody who's watching these videos. If you have any more questions about dairy, if dairy is something that you've already taken out of your diet and how that affected you, or if you're planning on seeing if you have an intolerance to dairy and you might want to do an elimination diet, we want to hear all of it. So do you have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that question up. And thank you, Julie. And we really appreciate the support. And we love you guys' questions. And look, there's no food on this earth, Nick, that any of our viewers have to be eating. So if something's holding you back and they're just making you feel exhausted or depressed or giving you acne, and now you got to wash, you're washing and you're putting this cream in, no food is worth it. And I understand that dairy is extremely delicious. And if you can have it, great. And just know that you don't have to be worried about osteoporosis, because now there's plenty of ways that people can get enough calcium so this way they can have strong bones. And people don't realize muscle contractions are very, you rely on calcium for muscle contractions and nerve function and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So everybody goes to sodium and potassium when they cramp it up, more potassium. Sometimes this could be somebody who's avoiding dairy and now they have low levels of calcium. They can have tingling in their fingers, tingling in their feet, depression. There's a lot of things. So this was a great question. I'm happy we got to it. And thank you, Julie. We appreciate the question.
All right. Well, if you like the episode, do us a favor, comment on it, give us a like, tell one of your friends about the episode, pass it on. That's the way that these kind of things grow. And we appreciate all the support you're giving us now. I think that's all I got.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next video. Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any videos in the future.